This man is about to send off to another world. While he was battling against a horde of monsters, a portal appeared out of nowhere and sucked him in. He then met this old man who he asked him to defeat the Demon King to regain his freedom. He did what he asked him to, but his captain came out of nowhere and stabbed him from behind. Before we get to know why his captain betrayed him, let's see what happened earlier. We are now on Earth in the year of 2045. The world is a battlefield. Monstrous maws with rows of jagged teeth snap at the air, their multiple red eyes glowing with malice. Screams and guttural roars fill the atmosphere as the creatures tear through the ruins. In the chaos, soldiers struggle to hold the line against the encroaching darkness. The air vibrates with the sound of slaughter and the heavy, wet thud of biological horrors moving through the wreckage of civilization. A soldier stares up in terror, the breath catching in his throat as a dark, pointed limb looms over him. The question of whether this is truly the end of his journey fills his mind. When the monster was about to finish him, a blade flashes through the darkness, severing the monstrous limbs in a single fluid motion. Han Sung, the commander-in-chief of the Earth Resistance, stands amidst the carnage with cold resolve. Turning to his fallen comrade, he commands the man to get up and keep moving. The soldier scrambles to his feet, stammering a confirmation of the order. Han Sung strides forward, his rifle held ready as he leads the charge. For decades, a relentless war has raged between humanity and these monsters. Even against the endless flood of creatures, the resistance has pushed forward. Now only the enemies directly before them remain. The realization strikes him that their ultimate goal is finally within reach, the end of the long nightmare appearing just over the horizon. A brilliant, golden light erupts from the ground, forming an intricate magic circle beneath Han Sung's feet. The sudden flare blinds the soldiers, who cry out in confusion, asking what is happening. One calls out to the commander in panic. From the void, a voice commands Han Sung to respond to the summons. Figures in the shadows celebrate the success of the ritual, marveling that the hero from another world they had only heard about has finally appeared before them. Bound by glowing chains of light, Han Sung stares at his wrists, questioning the nature of these shiny handcuffs. He demands to know where he is. An elderly man in ornate robes approaches, welcoming the hero from another world to the Empire. The old man acknowledges the suddenness of the situation but pleads with Han Sung to defeat the Demon King and save their world. Han Sung recoils, questioning the mention of a Demon King and demanding to know the old man's identity. He insists he has no time for this, as he was just in Korea. The old man commands silence, his hand glowing with a harsh, golden radiance. He announces the activation of the binding oath known as Jis. Han Sung screams as the spell sears into his very being, the light lashing around him like whips. The old man calmly explains that the spell will not harm him if he complies willingly. Gasping for air, Han Sung sarcastically asks if this is what they call talking nicely. The old man ignores the protest, repeating his plea to defeat the wicked Demon King and save the Empire. A sword is offered. Clattering onto the magic circle, the old man offers a hollow promise, suggesting they might be able to send Han Sung back to his world if he succeeds. He asks if the hero will accept the request. Trapped by the binding oath and the weight of the Empire's gaze, Han Sung finally relents, agreeing to the task. Thus his journey begins not on Earth, but in a foreign empire. As the hero from another world, he enters a new theater of war, working without a single moment of rest. Years bleed into one another as Han Sung dedicates himself to the Empire's subjugations. He cuts down enemies repeatedly, answering every endless request the crown demands. 3 years pass, then 5, then 10. He gives the entirety of his youth to the singular goal of slaying the Demon King Varlo. After the final blow, the question of whether he is finally free arises. Every night he had dreamed of his return home, but the old man appears again, casually presenting Han Sung with his next mission. Han Sung snaps, declaring this nonsense and noting it wasn't the deal. The old man retorts that saving the Empire does not end with the Demon King's fall. The old man explains that those rebelling against the Unification War must also be purged to prevent new insurgents from rising. He points to a wanted poster, identifying a high-risk target that must be eliminated for Han Sung to earn his freedom. He asks for just a little more help. Han Sung grinds his teeth, realizing a dog with a leash has no choice but to obey. He curses the bastards, wondering when the cycle will ever end. Soon. He stands amidst the flames of the Teutonia Knightdom, his blade buried in a man's chest. The dying man, Sir Babel, coughs blood and remarks that he never thought Han Sung would be so foolish. Han Sung looks away, stating he had no choice. He offers an apology to Babel, who recognizes him as the hero from another world. Babel tells him not to feel sorry, warning that Han Sung will be discarded just as he was. As Babel collapses, Han Sung stands in the silence, believing it is finally over. He thinks only of the fact that he can finally go home, unaware of the figure looming behind him. A blade pierces Han Sung from behind, triggering a gasp of shock. Count Brandenburg, the Empire's Grand Marshal and Holy Knight, speaks a mocking commendation for a job well done. Han Sung chokes on his own blood, wheezing the Count's name. Brandenburg sneers, acknowledging that the Hound has done his job splendidly. The realization that the vile bastards lied about the promise to send him home burns. Brandenburg asks what the point is in keeping a hound alive once its task is finished, noting that such creatures only know how to bite. Brandenburg bids a final farewell as Han Sung collapses into the dirt. The knowledge that they wouldn't let him go easily was always there. He curses them all, swearing he will never forget this humiliation. He vows that the Empire scum who deceived him will pay the price in ruin. As one life closes its eyes, the darkness is broken by a new light. A voice offers congratulations to the Duchess, announcing the birth of a boy. A woman with golden hair smiles down, calling the infant her baby and identifying herself as his mother. The infant Han Sung looks up, recognizing the man standing by the bed. The man is Duke Satchson, the highest-ranking necromancer and black magician on the continent. He realizes he is in the necropolis, the Empire's center of black magic, and the tower outside is the Black Tower. The stone of reincarnation he had secretly hidden worked perfectly, granting him a single rebirth. While the family he would be born into was a matter of luck, he has become the firstborn of a high noble house, Duke Satchson. The truth becomes clear that he has hit the jackpot, born with a golden spoon in his mouth. He resolves that once he grows up and masters necromancy, he will wipe out every last member of the imperial family. His mother notices the baby isn't crying and finds it odd, though his breathing is steady. She asks the nanny to check on him. An internal scoff follows the thought of how old they must think he is. The nanny confirms his breathing is stable and tells the Duchess there is no need to worry. Alan peers down at the infant, questioning if a silent baby is a bad omen. The midwife offers a cheerful reassurance, suggesting that if the silence concerns the Lord, he should simply spank the child until he cries. A sharp strike follows, the sound echoing through the room. The baby remains stoic, prompting the midwife to laugh at such a stubborn child, noting he must take after his father's own persistence. Alina steps forward to intervene, declaring their son is perfectly fine as she reaches out to take him. Frustration boils within the infant's mind. As a gentle touch reaches his bottom, the soul of Han Sung reflects on the sudden shift in his reality. He wonders when he began forgetting what warmth truly felt like. Though Alina is a noblewoman, her soft hands and the genuine affection she radiates provide a heat he hasn't felt in a lifetime of battle. Han Sung, a man who hadn't shed a single tear since reaching adulthood, finally finds the pressure too much to bear. 8 years pass in the blink of an eye. In the quiet of their moonlit chambers, Alan and Alina reflect on how quickly time flies since Dale was born. The boy remains glued to his books in the study, a habit he has kept since he was only 4 years old. Alan notes that the child must take after Alina, observing his growing interest in magic. Alina's expression turns serious as she addresses Alan, asking if he remembers the promise he made to her. Alan confirms he hasn't forgotten the vow to never teach Dale necromancy. Alan nods, assuring his dear wife that the promise remains intact. As they begin to discuss what gift to get Dale for his 8th birthday tomorrow, a frantic knocking disturbs the peace. A maid bursts into the room, breathless and trembling, shouting for the Duke. She reports that something has happened to young Master Dale in the study, her voice laced with panic. The parents rush to the study, finding the door thrown open. Dale is collapsed on the floor, surrounded by a swirling vortex of crackling blue energy. Alina screams his name in terror, rushing toward the center of the disturbance. Dale looks up, his face pale as he weakly calls for his mother and father while the mana continues to flare around him like lightning. Alina pulls the boy into a desperate embrace, checking for injuries and demanding to know what in the world just happened. Dale insists he is fine, though the air still hums with power. Behind them, Alan stands back, his own hand glowing with a faint light as he senses the heavy residue of mana lingering in the room. He looks at his son with a mixture of shock and intensity. Alan demands to know if Dale released the mana from within his own body. Internally, Dale curses his mistake, realizing he messed up by showing his power too soon. He fears his parents will grow suspicious of his true identity if he doesn't act quickly to provide an answer. To his surprise, Alan's stern face breaks into a smile. He places a hand on Dale's head, praising him as a true son of the house for such an early awakening. Alan laments that it is a shame he cannot teach the boy necromancy despite such obvious talent. This news stings Dale, who knows his revenge depends on mastering the dark arts. Alina orders the boy back to his room while she summons servants to clean the wreckage of the study. As Dale hurries away, Alan watches him go, telling Alina he has finally thought of the perfect gift for their son. The grand banquet hall on the second floor overflows with nobles from across the Black Duke's territory. Counts and lords gather in their finest attire to celebrate the young master's 8th birthday. Guests whisper behind fans about the delay in the boy's appearance, noting the grand scale of the banquet. Dale watches the lively crowd from a distance, his small frame draped in expensive furs and jewels. The attention feels heavy and unwelcome. Used to being treated like an outcast hero, Dale finds the role of a young master awkward and tiring. He remains troubled by the desk he destroyed when his mana went berserk while he was reminiscing about his past life. He wonders who left out the book titled The Biography of a Hero, as reading it triggered his outburst. He knows his talent for necromancy is too great to ignore, yet he struggles to find a way to convince his father to break his vow. Dale considers asking for necromancy as his birthday gift, but he quickly realizes that probably won't work. Alina approaches him, apologizing for the wait and wishing him a happy 8th birthday. She isn't alone. Standing behind her is a figure draped in a heavy, dark cloak. Dale asks who the stranger is, prompting Alina to introduce her as an elder of the Blue Magic Tower and a master of water magic. The hood falls to reveal Lady Sepia, the wise elf, whose pointed ears and calm gaze command respect. Alina announces that Sepia will be Dale's new teacher, a revelation that shocks the boy. Dale immediately realizes the hidden intent water magic focuses on defense and disruption, a clear sign his mother wants to steer him away from his father's dark path. Sepia smiles, expressing her desire to work with him before asking if they could talk alone for a moment. High upon a snowy wind-swept mountain path, the two stand alone. Sepia admits she was hired specifically to teach him nothing but water magic. She asks if he is disappointed, sensing that there was another type of power he truly craved. Dale is stunned into silence as she correctly guesses that it is only natural for him to want to learn his father's necromancy. Sepia explains that the condition for the Black Duke's marriage is a fact known to everyone in the Empire. When Alina was being courted, she was frightened by Alan's ill repute as a dark mage. To win her hand, he promised that his dark legacy would never be passed on. On their wedding day, the elders of the Black Tower even traded their black robes for pure white ones to honor the vow. Despite the difficulty of the situation, Sepia promises Dale she will find a way to persuade Alina, keeping his hope for dark magic alive. Standing tall against a massive tree in the snowy woods, Sepia asks if Dale will accept her teachings. The young boy hesitates, questioning if his teacher feels uneasy about the nature of black magic or necromancy. He points out that as an elf who values natural laws, the act of reviving the dead must be repulsive. A light laugh escapes Sepia as she finds his concern amusing. She challenges his logic, asking if the holy power used by priests to resurrect the dying is truly part of nature's will. Dale stands stunned as she concludes that in her eyes, necromancy and resurrection are one and the same. Observing her unconventional perspective, Dale realizes she is far removed from the usual orthodox elves and might be a superior teacher to what he imagined. Sepia gestures for the lesson to begin, noting that he formed a mana circle fragment days ago. Her first objective is for him to expand that fragment into a full first circle. The prospect excites Dale as the magic books in his possession require that specific milestone. Eager to seize the chance, he listens as she instructs him to place a hand over his heart and concentrate. Closing his eyes, Dale obeys his teacher. In this world so different from Earth, mana saturates the very air, yet raw energy remains impossible for any but ancient beings like dragons to handle. To process this power, a mana circle of the heart becomes a necessity. The process requires gathering scattered fragments around the organ and forcing the assembled ring to rotate steadily. Light erupts from Dale's chest as he realizes the circle imprints a mana path directly onto the heart. Following Sepia's guidance, he focuses on the rotation. Though she warns him that the process typically demands a month of training and urges him not to be hasty, the boy looks up. He calls out to his teacher, asking if he has already succeeded as blue rings of energy swirl around his small frame. Disbelief colors Sepia's expression as she wonders how a child could form a circle in mere minutes. The possibility of him being an innate genius crosses her mind. To test his limits, she asks him to attempt releasing his magical power through the newly formed circle. Dale agrees to try, his hands glowing with a fierce, sparking light that defies the expectations of what a normal child should be capable of. While mana surges, Dale acknowledges that a standard level of power will never suffice for his revenge against the Empire or Duke Satchson. Unlike his past life where he relied on body engravings for combat magic, his current form inherited the talent of the Lord of the Black Tower. This body accepts mana with natural ease, suggesting he can master more than just water magic. Focusing his intent, he directs the flow to his fingertips to create a deadly shard aimed at the Empire's throat. Sepia watches the condensation of energy, noting that most beginners lose the form of their magic during release. To her surprise, Dale crystallizes the power into a complete ice bolt. She initially suspects the destructive force might be lacking since he focused so heavily on the spell's shape. The bolt flies toward a distant tree with a sharp whistle. A deafening boom shakes the snowy clearing as the ice bolt connects. Shards of bark and frozen earth spray into the air from the impact site. Sepia stands frozen, her eyes wide with shock at the sheer scale of the disturbance. The projectile proved sharp and hard enough to pierce straight through the wood. Sepia stares at the destruction, certain that such precision is far beyond the capabilities of a mere 8-year-old. Behind her, Dale stands with a small, sheepish smile, the air still shimmering with the remnants of his casting. Kneeling by the shattered tree, Sepia examines the frozen remains. She expected simple mana movement, but Dale infused the release with the ice element. Even for basic spell, the way it perfectly absorbed the surrounding chill is terrifying. Sensing her silence, Dale asks if he did something wrong while Sepia remains lost in thought. The sophistication of the formula is too advanced for an innocent child to create by accident. Sepia identifies 3 distinct projections: rotation, acceleration, and compression. These represent the golden ratio of military magic, a perfect spell of slaughter cast unconsciously. Looking at the boy, she tells him it is nothing, though she finally understands the regret felt by the Black Archmage. Inside a lavish room, a man with long dark hair questions why Sepia claims she cannot teach Dale. He argues that a child who reached the first circle in minutes deserves more instruction, not less. Sepia remains silent for a moment before explaining that the boy executed a perfect military-grade formula the instant he achieved his rank. The man reacts with a sharp intake of breath, finding it hard to believe an 8-year-old could manifest such a thing. Sepia looks the man in the eye, stating plainly that young Lord Dale possesses a talent for killing. As an elder of the Blue Tower, which advocates for non-lethality, her words carry heavy weight. The man asks if this means she is refusing him, but she clarifies her intent. Precisely because of his lethal nature, she feels a burning desire to guide him correctly with her own hands. The man notes that Dale already has a specific interest, the dark magic of the Black Archmage. This revelation causes a flicker of tension. Sepia admits she knows the tales of the Black Archmage's romance and respects his promise to Lady Alina, yet she insists that a father's vow does not give him the right to dictate his child's future. Talent as immense as Dale's cannot be ignored or suppressed. Outside the room, Dale sits dejected on the floor, unable to understand a single word of the adult's conversation. He realizes his first spell carried far more power than intended, surprising even the Lord of the Sepia Tower. Resolving to be more careful with his control, he lets out a heavy sigh before someone calls out his name. Dale's eyes widen as a familiar figure appears before him. He greets Uncle Helmut with a bright smile, questioning the man's sudden presence and long absence from the estate. Helmut, clad in heavy plate armor, lets out a hearty laugh, explaining that his duty to protect the duchy kept him away for far too long. Lifting the boy high into the air, Helmut boasts of sweeping away terrifying monsters. Dale quickly deduces that his uncle has been conquering a dungeon. In this world, the emergence of dungeons and monster overflows represent catastrophic events for any territory. Since the era of the Demon King, these creatures have brought relentless destruction to human settlements. Consequently, the Knights of the Realm prioritize the subjugation of these dens of malice. The struggle intensifies when Dungeon breaks force knights to eliminate overflowing beasts. Within the Duchy of Sachsen, the situation remains far more severe than in other lands, a burden Dale carries personally. Because his previous incarnation as the otherworldly hero slew the Demon King, the Duke of Sachsen now bears the command to reclaim the Demon King's former lands for the Empire. Dale recognizes this as the Empire simply handing off the dirty work. Concerned for his kin, Dale urges Helmut to remain safe, prompting the knight to ask if the young lord truly worries for him. A commanding presence interrupts the reunion as the Duke approaches. Helmut immediately drops to a knee, addressing the man as Your Grace. The Duke acknowledges the knight's grueling campaign with a word of praise. Suddenly, the doors open to reveal Dale's mother and her retinue of maids, wondering if everyone has gathered. Dale wonders what his mother requires as she calls his name with a joyful expression, rushing to her son. The Duchess expresses her amazement at Dale reaching the first circle of magic. The Duke offers his congratulations, promising Dale anything he desires as a reward. Dale hesitates, contemplating if asking for necromancy would appear too cunning for a child. To maintain his innocent facade, he requests a little sister, a wish that leaves both parents stunned and flushed with embarrassment. Damn, what an assist from Dale. The Duke solemnly vows to try, earning a cheerful response from Dale. Nearby, Helmut's subordinates tease the captain for his reaction. As night settles over the sprawling towers of the city, Dale collapses onto his bed. The use of magic leaves him drained and weary. His eyes flutter shut as exhaustion takes hold, pulling him into a deep slumber. Darkness swallows the peace of sleep. A sinister figure from the past looms over Dale, addressing him as Han Sung. The man mocks the boy's new life, sneering at how easily people become soft when granted a warm home and loving parents. He dismisses Dale's desire for revenge, warning that the Empire will never stop searching for Han Sung. The threat rings through the void, promising that the Empire will hunt him until every trace of his existence vanishes from the world. Dale bolts upright in bed, gasping for air. Agony flares in his chest, making him feel as though his heart might explode under the pressure. Realization dawns as Dale identifies the sensation as a mana overload. He curses the Imperial bastards who continue to haunt him even in this life. Seeking relief, he stumbles out into the frigid night air, hoping the cold will soothe the burning within his veins. The biting wind offers no respite as the pain only intensifies. A voice cuts through the dark, observing his suffering. Teacher Sepia stands among the snow-covered trees, recognizing the mana overload as a sign of his immense talent. However, she admits to sensing a dangerous aura emanating from the boy. Sepia extends her hand, channeling her own power to stabilize the boy. She reflects that if malice were to ever corrupt Dale's magic in the future, the damage would be irreversible. As her light fades, the crushing pressure of the mana overload vanishes. Sepia calls his name and Dale responds with a quiet affirmation, breathless and confused. Sepia explains that magic serves as a mirror of the heart, which is why every mage displays spells with different characteristics. She reveals that Dale possesses a talent for taking life, a gift she deems incredibly dangerous. To guide this power, she presents a heavy tome, feeling fortunate that she is the one to teach him. Dale questions his teacher as she hands him the book, recognizing it as a necromancy spellbook. A gentle smile touches Sepia's lips as she speaks of the fate that brought them together. She softly wishes Dale a happy birthday, her voice full of warmth. Struck by the gesture and the relief of the night, Dale steps forward and pulls his teacher into a tight embrace. A few days pass since their last encounter. Under the frozen boughs of the forest outside the north gate, the world lies hushed beneath a blanket of white. Sepia stands with her young pupil Dale, pointing toward a small creature in the brush. She questions if he sees the rabbit, and he confirms. Her voice carries a weight of instruction as she tells him to recall the experience of hunting with his father. Steeling himself, Dale acknowledges her command. Mana surges, a complex glowing geometric circle forms at Dale's fingertips, crackling with cold energy. With a sharp motion, he releases a jagged shard of ice. The projectile streaks through the winter air, striking the rabbit with lethal precision. The small creature falls, its life extinguished in an instant amidst the snow. Sepia watches the boy. Even after taking a life, no tremor disturbs his hands. She muses quietly before calling out to him, explaining that while magic may share a name, the form it takes varies infinitely between mages. When she asks if he understands the cause of this divergence, Dale admits his uncertainty. She reveals that magic serves as a mirror reflecting the heart, turning the contents of the mind into mana particles. It is the landscape of the heart made real. Dale remains silent, his expression a mix of thought and uncertainty. Continuing her lecture, Sepia explains that names like firewall are only a stepping stone to aid a firm mental image. This principle extends to the great magic towers. She describes how the red tower pursues order through the application of raw power, while the blue tower seeks order through harmony. These core ideologies are reflected in the very form of the magic their followers wield. The philosophy each tower upholds becomes the bedrock of their entire magical system. Sepia mentions the existence of the black, white, and green towers, yet she quickly stops herself. Looking at Dale's inquisitive expression, she tells him such knowledge is still too early for him to grasp. The lesson shifts to the dark arts of necromancy, specifically the art of zombification. This basic craft uses mana to raise a corpse, allowing the caster to exert total control. Dale focuses, reaching out as if to tie invisible threads of mana to the fallen rabbit. Dark, wispy energy coils around the small body, binding it to his will. The rabbit rises, now encased in a jagged shell of frozen armor that glints under the winter sun. Sepia admires the quality of the construct, noting the form is quite good. To test the limits of his creation, she asks if they should see how strong the defense truly is. She prepares a strike and Dale braces for the impact. A sharp crack resounds through the woods. Dale gasps, exclaiming that he successfully blocked the teacher's bolt. Sepia offers her praise, calling his performance excellent. Observing his eager stance, she senses he has more to say and asks if there is something he wishes for. Dale responds with a fervent shout of affirmation. With his hand over his heart, Dale requests that she help him master water attribute magic as well. A small smile plays on Sepia's lips before she flatly refuses. The rejection leaves Dale stunned, forcing a confused plea for clarification. She points out that while his achievement today was impressive, it was only the most basic application of the attribute. High-dimensional enlightenment is required for the more difficult stages of water magic. Sepia explains that for a typical beginner, mastering even one type is a task that is too much to handle. To become a dual mage capable of using two types simultaneously is a feat far too difficult for someone of his age. She concludes that he is being a little too ambitious. Frustration etches itself onto Dale's face as he clenches his fists, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and burgeoning anger. He stands small against the vast, snowy backdrop, the weight of his teacher's rejection heavy upon his shoulders. Sepia remains composed, her expression unreadable as she brings the day's instruction to a close. As the sun sets, a grand library stands in the moonlight, its high windows illuminating rows upon rows of ancient knowledge. Deep within the silence of the study, Dale labors over massive, leather-bound volumes. He hauls the heavy books across the floor, his determination fueled by a silent vow to surpass the limits placed upon him. He sinks into a meditative state, channeling mana until a dark, violet aura radiates from his small frame, swirling with intense power. The strain is immense, and as the hours pass, his strength wanes. His eyes grow heavy, the world blurring into darkness as he succumbs to the sheer exhaustion of his solitary pursuit. Morning light finds them back in the snowy plains. Sepia looks at him with concern, asking if he is all right since he appears to have missed sleep. Dale explains he stayed up preparing something for her to see. Though she warns him not to overwork, he simply agrees. He raises his hand, a magic circle forming with a dark, unstable hue. The ice armor forms on the rabbit again, and Sepia initially believes he has mastered the basics completely. Suddenly, the air fractures. A sharp sound precedes a violent ice explosion that catches her off guard. She stares in shock as the rabbit does not simply break, dark smoke billows from its mouth. A thunderous crash erupts as a rabbit-like creature is consumed by a blinding flash of energy. A massive eruption of energy tears through the clearing, sending jagged shards of ice whistling through the air like arrows. Sepia reacts with lightning speed, her hands moving to summon a shimmering hexagonal barrier that pulses with blue light. She stands firm against the onslaught, her eyes wide at the true scale of the power Dale has managed to call forth. Sepia remains speechless, her attention fixed on the young boy. Dale holds the proof of his prowess, a swirling sphere of frost in one hand and shadowy energy in the other. He identifies the techniques as corpse explosion and ice explosion. He explains that he successfully merged two types of magic, water attribute and dark attribute. With a confident look, he asks his teacher if this display qualifies him as a dual mage. The air hums with the residue of his power as he awaits her judgment. A chilling silence hangs over the snowy landscape as Sepia stands frozen, her eyes wide with disbelief. Before her lies a method of attack she has never witnessed. A lethal fusion where the freezing explosion of frozen armor merges with corpse explosion to claim a devastatingly wide area. Sharp shards of ice and jagged bone fragments embed themselves into the earth like blades, leaving a trail of calculated destruction. To Sepia, this is no mere accident of magic, it is a technique forged for the sole purpose of killing, the kind of art perfected only by those who have spent an entire lifetime on the battlefield. She stares at the young boy, Dale, wondering what kind of harrowing inner world could produce such a cold, efficient instinct for slaughter. The heavy thud of hooves breaks her reverie as her helmet approaches on a massive, armored steed. Dale calls out to him with a bright smile, asking if the commander has just returned from clearing another dungeon. Helmut, a man whose presence commands the very air, confirms they were subjugating a small group of monsters, noting that even the legendary Black Cavalry found the task somewhat difficult. These are the invincible knights of Duke Sachsen's house, warriors who dominate every conflict with lances wreathed in shimmering aura. Leading them is Helmut himself, a man who has ascended to the prestigious ranks of the Seven Swords of the continent. Eager to grow stronger, Dale reminds the commander of his promise to teach him swordsmanship in the future, knowing there is no better master to learn from. Helmut lets out a boisterous laugh, welcoming the boy's ambition at any time. As the cold wind picks up, Helmut urges the young master to head inside where it is warm, bidding them a safe return. Sepia leads Dale back toward the castle, the sun setting over the spires. However, the peace of the evening is short-lived. That night within the opulent halls of the estate, a tense conversation begins as the Duke demands to know the meaning behind Sepia's recent reports. Steam rises from a delicate teapot as Sepia calmly confirms her findings. She reveals that young Master Dale has already mastered the first circle of both necromancy and water magic. The Duke's expression darkens, reminding her that she was strictly commissioned to teach only water magic. Sepia does not flinch, explaining that as a teacher, she felt compelled to grant the child the knowledge he truly desired. She reiterates that water magic was never the only path Dale wished to walk. The atmosphere in the room grows heavy with the weight of this revelation as the Duke and his wife, Alina, process the sheer scale of their son's talent. Alina breaks the silence, asking Sepia to continue her instruction in water magic if that is what Dale wishes. Sepia bows her head, offering a sincere apology for causing the teacher to break her oath to the Black Duke. Once they are alone, Alina lets out a long sigh, marveling at the fact that their boy is a dual mage at only 8 years old. She admits that while his rapid growth is almost frightening, it is exactly what makes him their son. The Duke remains solemn, his mind racing as he looks at his wife, the name Alina escaping his lips in a soft, contemplative tone. The Duke confesses his own desires, stating that he wants to teach Dale necromancy himself. As a lord, he intends to give his son the strength required to bear the heavy duties of an heir. As a mage, he cannot ignore the chance to accept such a talented disciple, and as a father, he feels a primal need to pass his legacy down to his offspring. He offers his wife a deep apology for the path he is choosing. Alina acknowledges that the public perception of necromancy remains poor, with many whispering that it is nothing more than the magic of death. Despite her initial attempts to stop this, she now urges the Duke to raise Dale to be a necromancer powerful enough to crush any who would dare speak against him. The Duke vows to wager everything he possesses to ensure their son becomes the very best. Later, deep within the basement of Duke Sachsen's castle, they stand in the Black Duke's private magic workshop. The Duke's voice is cold as he expresses his great disappointment in Dale's current progress. He questions if the boy has been reanimating creatures without even understanding the mechanics of what he is moving. Dale tries to defend himself, stating he only practiced what his teacher provided, but the Duke clicks his tongue in annoyance. He warns Dale that as long as he is the one teaching, the boy is never to use such rudimentary basic necromancy again. The lesson takes a grueling turn as the Duke places a heavy hand on a stack of books, commanding Dale to memorize the entire bone and muscle structure of every living creature. Dale can only offer a submissive agreement. The texts provided are specialized volumes that, in Dale's previous world, would only be encountered by high-level doctors. After spending grueling days committing every single word to memory, Dale finally completes the basics. The Duke presents a new, ornate book, declaring that the real lesson is finally beginning. Dale prepares himself, but a sudden sense of confusion washes over him as he looks at the table. Lying before them is the fresh corpse of a goblin. The Duke notices Dale's flustered expression and begins his lecture, explaining that an unskilled warlock can only move a master's corpse like a mindless zombie. Conversely, a true practitioner can take the body of a mere foot soldier and forge it into a terrifying death knight. He gestures toward the undead subject, challenging Dale to show how he would move it. Dale hesitates, his mind racing through the anatomical details he just mastered. The boy realizes that unlike a small rabbit with few bones, a bipedal goblin is a complex creature requiring countless threads of mana to bind and control. He struggles to maintain the connection, cursing under his breath as the mana flares. It feels like trying to operate an impossibly intricate puppet. He attempts to use rigor mortis to bolster the creature's defense, but the joints and muscles become so stiff that the corpse cannot move at all. Despair begins to set in as he wonders what to do until the Duke's voice cuts through his panic. His father acknowledges that while accelerating rigor mortis was a clever idea for durability, it has the side effect of restricting movement beyond utility. The Duke tells his son to watch closely as purple mana erupts from his hand. He explains that the rib cage is naturally designed to protect the internal organs. However, with a sickening crack, he forces the mana to warp the goblin's skeleton. He posits that for the dead, there is no longer a need to protect entrails. The bones shift and sharpen, transforming from a defensive cage into an offensive weapon. Dale watches in silent shock as the very structure of the creature is rewritten by his father's will. The Duke emphasizes that the core of dark magic lies in understanding the subject's structure and changing its form to suit a specific purpose. Dale is struck by the raw power and logic of the demonstration. He asks his father to explain the ultimate philosophy pursued by the Black Tower. A dark, knowing smile plays on the Duke's lips as he provides a single-word answer: truth. The Duke continues, stating that truth always exists within the domain of death. He explains that to reach this truth, one must fully understand the weight of life. As he speaks, a sudden, violent memory flashes through Dale's mind. He sees a warrior standing amidst a field of fire and blood, a sword held high. A desperate man grovels at the warrior's feet, begging for his life and calling the man a great hero. The juxtaposition of his father's cold philosophy and this visceral image of mercy sends a jolt through the boy's system. The vision intensifies, the sound of the man begging for his life echoing in Dale's ears. The warrior in the memory looks down with cold, red eyes, unmoved by the pleas. Back in the workshop, the Duke notices that Dale has turned terribly pale and asks if he is all right. Dale stands frozen for a moment, the phantom scent of smoke and blood still clinging to his senses. He quietly assures his father that he is fine, though his eyes remain wide with the lingering shock of the vision.